Welcome back to another episode. It's Stephanie. She's back again, my expert in all things Scientology kind. You and my friend Sean are probably the two people that I go to when it comes to anything Scientology based.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm still learning, but it's nice to be here again to speak with you. I'll do my best.
You probably have a few answers that could clear some things up. So I went to school for chemical dependency, but I also took psychology, and that was the thing I was going for. But I ended up not just getting my degree in it, just ended up getting the regular and just stopping college because it was tasky enough trying to be able to do projects on time. But so with studying facial cues and everything so what happened to me recently was not only was like my page constantly being viewed by Scientology on Instagram, like stories and stuff like that, but I had gotten a random message from an unknown profile. Now, this unknown profile, I've tried to look up the actual thing to it after they sent me a profile of Mike Rinder's daughter. Now, you probably can explain this very, very well, considering because I've looked through her thing, and now I don't see. This is where I say you got to understand two sides of a story here. What this person's reality is, and another person's reality is. But there's a lot of things where I'm looking at it like this person is. It seems like you got a gun to your head. I'm just saying. I mean, look, me and you have natural conversations. Is just this type of thing. But when I was looking at some of her videos, I was like, you look like you're reading off a script. And I want you to clarify up some things because all she keeps talking about is the specific instances and kind of defaming Mike Rinder's character and this message by this random profile. And now I can't find it. It's not available anymore. I don't know if they blocked me, but I checked on my other Twitter profiles. It's not available at all. So they must have just deleted their account.
Very interesting.
Talked about you don't know this side of the story, and I'm guessing it's more from the Scientology aspect because everyone that follows this happens to be Scientology, but everything seems so like how like we say woke culture seems like it's doing the opposite of what it's intended to do. Like it seems
absolutely.
So that's kind of what this Scientology thing is. Like there's a bunch of these little organizations that talk about like racism and discrimination, but they use words where I'm like, that's very, very like, why would you even address that? It's kind of like how the news, when they say like a young, and then they name the person's ethnicity, say was killed. It's like, why do you need to even include that in there? Just say a person was killed.
Yeah, exactly. It's a dead person. It's somebody that suffered violence. At that point, nothing else matters. Those kind of details, I think, are definitely inflammatory and unnecessary. We're all people, know. But I'm very interested. You don't remember the name of that profile by any chance, do you?
No, I have the message saved on my phone, but when I click the profile thing, there's nothing there. It's a blank profile. I can't even send it to anybody. It's not available. So I only have the link that they sent, which is the justiceformom.org that Mike Rinder's daughter runs. And I was looking through her thing, and they keep talking about his abusive ways and stuff like that. Now, I don't know what happened in the past before whatever happened. So I'm not 100% sure if it's just like they're inflaming the story, but they just talk about one incident where I'm like, it's possible there could be one incident, but they're kind of beating the dead horse with it.
I'm glad this is the question at hand, because this is what definitely launched me in the direction that I've gone. I watched The Aftermath with Leah Remini and Mike Rinder on A&E. And, I kept seeing all these people, they were crying and they were sharing their pain. I was hearing these stories of abuse and disconnection and destroyed families. And I was like, I want to do something. And then what do I do? And then I started looking into these things further. And that's when I saw the allegations against Mike. And I thought, okay, hold up. Because if this man is guilty of domestic violence, and you have to admit now, especially since you've seen it, it looks pretty legit. The allegations if you didn't know any better.
I talked to so many people where I can tell if someone's giving me a story or not.
Okay, well, for the average person, though, if they didn't realize what was going on and they didn't know anything about Scientology, I think that it would at least give them pause, which it did me. Because domestic violence and abuse it's a huge thing. And so I thought, well, okay, if this is in any way true, I cannot be a part of this, because I'm not going to support someone, who has abused anyone. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act request with Pinellas County Sheriff, and I got the sheriff's report. And when I read it, and then I also, and these are documents that are available on my blog. I have an article that just says the documentation, and it's got everything that I'm going to speak about today on there. Anyone can look for themselves and read them, and they can make their own decisions about this. But the bottom line is there is a paramedics report and there is a Pinellas County Sheriff's report about this incident. As you stated, they only focus on this one incident. And that's because there is only this one incident for them to be able to exploit, to go from. Mike has even said, Mike Rinder was a very, very high placed executive in the Sea organization in Scientology. He wasn't there. He's the first one to tell you that as a parent, he wasn't there. Taryn and Benjamin, his son, were basically raised by Scientology. They had a nanny. Their mother, Kathy Bernardini, who I affectionately refer to as Bitter Bernardini, who is the victim in this farce. She was in the Sea Org, or she may still be in the Sea Org. She and Mike, when you're in the Sea Org, duty is first, period. There is no room for, as they refer to, nattering children. Children are raised from the get-go to understand that they are second to the mission, which is clearing the planet. And they're also raised to like, if you're crying because you miss your parent, that's counterintention, that you're going against what you're causing a problem because you're going against what your parents need to do to clear this planet. So this is how Taryn was raised, basically by Scientology, not by her parents. Mike was not, Mike and Kathy, I mean, I don't know the specifics of this part because I haven't asked, maybe I should. I don't believe that even they work together. I do know that in Scientology, the bulk of the time, even spouses will go for years without seeing each other. The spouses will have been separated and not see each other because they're busy doing their job, which is not a good way to have a healthy marriage, I mean,
know from Ron Miscavige's interview on Joe Rogan, he was talking about how like he would only get presents from his family members, even couldn't even see his son. And actually he did something wrong when he was on this Sea Org, whatever this facility was, and they had to put him in like a brig or some type of thing where it got to be 118 degrees down there, and he's in
the RPF. Yeah, in the hole. Yeah.
He talked about at the time he was like 65 or something like that, which is, a lot. And that's when he started to realize like this is kind of like a little bit of this is too much. This is not something he wants to be a part of. He had to change it. And I think from listening to that episode a couple of times, I really pulled some things out of it. A lot of things too is like it's hard because you got to understand that the person can be spiteful in a situation where they could talk awful about something because they're just so mad at it. And I think this is the same thing with the Scientology thing too. The issue is I'm trying to understand both sides of it. I cannot get a Scientology person on here. They're more than happy to view my shit, but they won't ever come onto the show, which I understand. But
the reason why, Robbie, is because they're lying.
Yeah.
And they cannot sit in front of anybody. I've publicly made the declaration that I will make a public apology and I will post any of their evidence that what they're saying is the truth. I will make on my blog, and I'll make a video. I'm saying it, I'm going to say it again. Scientology, Taryn, Kathy, David Miscavige, you prove me wrong, and I will make a public apology. I'll make a video and publicly apologize for supporting Mike Rinder. Until you can do that, we have the truth. Okay, what happened was, and there is not me, I'm just purveying the truth. Mike Rinder had left Scientology in 2007. He had been in the hole. He had been in the RPF, which is the Project Rehabilitation Force. It's Scientology's prison. They say it's a spiritual retreat, but if you've heard any of the stories coming out of that, it is abusive, and it's a prison camp. And he had been there for 2 years prior to being yanked out and thrown into a suit and sent to London with Tommy Davis, who was then the spokesperson in Mike's place. They were trying to stop a BBC show and that was against Scientology. Miscavige did not want this show to air. So he sent Tommy and Mike to London to do what they could to try to stop this. And as everything was going on, Rinder one day came to a decision that he realized that he was in an untenable situation because he wasn't doing what Miscavige wanted him to do well enough or whatever. And he had been told that when you come back, you're going to be sent so far away from your family, you'll never see him again. And he was like, what do I have to lose at this point? So he blew. And that was in 2007.
Oh, just to clarify, when somebody blows, for instance, or when someone does that, they see that as that you have left Scientology because you have done something wrong, not that you don't want to be involved in that group anymore. It's not the religion's fault. It's your fault. That means you don't want to contaminate the rest. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And especially Mike, given his position in the Sea Org, he has so much information that he was a huge threat to Scientology. I mean, he's a huge threat. Everything that he knows and has experienced firsthand. The last thing they wanted him to do, was to be believed. So everything was quiet.
Too
publicly. Quiet. Everything it was all quiet. Publicly, it was a dark and stormy night, and they were interfering in Mike's life. They were stalking him. That this didn't happen publicly yet. Mike got a job with a man named Robert Almblad, who he's an amazing and brilliant inventor. And he had invented a clean ice machine that would take out the bacteria and everything. It would have been perfect for hospitals and everything. And Mike was working for Robert. And Scientology would follow them, record them. They would contact Robert's potential investors. They were stalking. They bought a house across or down the street from Rinder and installed a security camera that monitored Rinder's house 24/7. They stole his trash and would go through his trash looking for any possible thing that they could use. They followed him everywhere he went. They'd pop up out of nowhere if he was at an airport or wherever. They followed him mercilessly. But then he found out his son Benjamin, allegedly, and I say allegedly because I personally think this may be a lie, just to make him look bad. I don't know. I have no proof that Benjamin got cancer. But the story is Benjamin was diagnosed with cancer. That's his son. And his ex-wife and Benjamin's mother chose not to tell Mike that his son was dying. The way Mike found out about it was through the newspaper in Florida, because apparently Kathy called the newspaper, St. Petersburg Times at the time is what it was called, I believe. And Kathy had told them, and Mike doesn't even care about his son. He's dying from cancer, and he hasn't reached out and talked to him even once. Mike didn't know and I have from online, I've put this in various blogs, where she herself said she did not tell him.
That's so hard to believe that he wouldn't talk to his son, because the side that has the don't talk to these people is Scientology. It's to cut
Yeah.
those non-believers out of your life. Now, okay, so I'm kind of unintentionally playing devil's advocate, and I'm not
Oh, that's
trying
fine.
to, but I think
That's
it's more of
okay.
the concept of every discussion that you can find when it comes across Scientology and when it comes across anti-Scientology, they're all one-sided, which I understand is kind of the point of it. But I'm trying to meet and understand through both kind of things here. So I've learned a lot from the first time we've talked, and I think I'm going to say some things here, and I want you just to, you know, hear me out, and then we're going to go from here.
Absolutely.
I'm not
Sure.
Scientology, by the way. I'd like to, if anybody wants to
I
listen.
looked I looked you up. I know.
But so from what I'm seeing with Scientology, and here's my kind of thought and kind of synopsis of the whole situation when it comes to the people that are involved into it. Now, I thought this was like a religion type thing, which religion lightly with the emphasis on the religion. Um, I think I thought that with all the ex-cult people I've talked to, it's kind of like you need something to believe in, so this is something to believe in. Now, I think a small percentage of people actually think it's like that. I think Daniel Miscavige or whoever, I think he is a person that believes in the stuff that he's doing and believes in all these things and has this kind of,
David,
yeah, David, not Daniel.
the leader.
Yeah,
Is that who we're talking about? The leader? The
yeah,
leader?
yeah.
Okay.
So
No. Okay.
I think he has all this type of like built-in thing where he might sense it might be a little bit of craziness, but at the same time, he's so 100% in and has so much power with it that this is his whole belief. It's his whole reality, much like for us, our reality is everything that we can kind of agree on. But then I also think there's people that they notice that a lot of this is like BS, but they're not questioning it. They're just going along with it because they have a home. I didn't know from after Ron Miscavige's episode when he's talking about like I thought the $50 a week thing. I was like, how do these people survive? Well, they give them a home. It might not be a best place. It might be slowly isolated and controlled and kind of like rats in a cage, but it's a place. And a lot of people, like I mean, if you talk to a kid that has no money to his account and he can make $50 a week and get a free place to live, technically, as long as he's doing chores, that's kind of how they get all this nice shit, is because people are taking care of it for them. Then that's very malleable for that person to do that, where they're not going to want to research into anything like that. I thought I couldn't get Scientology people on my show because there was no Scientology people on the internet. In some cases, depending on your level, that's what it is. But there's a lot on there, but they just don't even want to dive their hands into anything of this sort because it might affect that they might lose their home. They might get kicked out of the church. They might have a bunch of different things going on there. So that's another perspective. And then there's a perspective where there's probably people that are afraid to say a damn thing about it on the concept of not only losing their place, but maybe they're going to lose contact with their family members. And that's
That's
what
the
I'm
bottom
trying to
line.
understand. Yeah.
That is the bottom line. Disconnection is a huge, it's a huge deal. The thought that, you know, children are ripped from their parents, spouses are divorced over this. The Scientologists truly believe that they're supposed to do the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics is how it goes in Scientology. And for Scientology, the greatest number of dynamics is Scientology. Anything that goes against Scientology, no matter what it may be, is you're an enemy. And that includes if your wife leaves, you have a choice to make. You can get declared a suppressive person, which makes you open to fair game, which is what happened to Mike and so many other people. Just as an aside, I highly encourage you to look up the name Paulette Cooper when you have a chance and see what they did to her. And it's not just them. They ended up, what I was going to say before, they ended up ruining Robert Almlad. They cost him over $1 million just because he was a friend of Mike Rinder's and trying to give the man a job. But Scientology, they believe they are superior to the rest of us. They refer to non-Scientologists, my mouth isn't working, as wogs. And it's we are wogs, WOGS.
I know.
And
I was going to read the story of Paulette Cooper for anybody listening so they can educate themselves too.
yeah, that it's definitely, you definitely need to Tony Ortega and Paulette Cooper wrote an excellent book about it.
They called the
But
Scandal
yeah,
of
go ahead.
Scientology. She said this
Yeah,
resulted
go
in a
ahead.
legal, long-winded battle lasting until 1986 when Cooper settled with the Church of Scientology for the second time. The first settlement had been in 1976. Among other measures, the church used forged bomb threats against itself in an attempt to shut Cooper up. Coincident or yeah, yeah. I don't even know that word. They spelled it wrong. I'm guessing that
Oh,
says
that's why.
coincidentally. She was
Yeah.
indicted or she was indicted and arrested. If these measures had failed, the church had planned to forge a bomb threat against Henry Kissinger in Cooper's name. This plan was known as Operation Freakout. That's all it said.
They had someone, she was writing a book. She wrote a book about Scientology. They did not want that book published. So they went after her personally. And what they did was they had Scientologists befriend her. Somebody who had access to her apartment stole her stationery, which had her fingerprints on it. And they used her stationery with her fingerprints to forge these bomb threats. And she was indicted. She was arrested and indicted. She was facing the rest of her life in prison. And the only thing that saved her was the FBI did a massive raid, coincidentally, on Scientology. And they came away with thousands and thousands of files. And amongst all of this paperwork was proof that they were framing her to stop her from publishing her book. And then that's when they let her go and drop the charges. They would have ruined her life because she wrote a book they didn't like. So this is how far they're willing to go. And this is the fear. I mean, this is fair game and dead agenting, it's called. This is fair game. This is what they do. Their intent is to intimidate and silence you. And it comes from Hubbard. All of this stems all the way back. He's the one that wrote these policies. And they did it again in Clearwater. They snuck into Clearwater, Florida, under an assumed name called the United Federation of Churches or something along those lines. And they started buying up property. And when then mayor of Clearwater, Gabe Cazares, when he started questioning it and he found out that they were Scientologists, they did the same thing to him. They tried to ruin him. They tried to frame him for a fake hit and run. And when that didn't work, they were going to try to frame him for false sexual misconduct allegations. This is what Scientology is willing to do. So this brings
That's
us.
a government tactic. Government tactic is like a lot of people talk about, like when these scandals come out, it's a blackmail type thing, but you fail up. So if you take the blame for something as
Yeah,
a politician, or you take a blame as something that's in the government, you end up actually failing upwards. So you actually get promoted for taking the blame, but now they have something over your head. So if you ever go against them or anything that they say, they can use it against you. I think the main thing, and I think with that Ron Miscavige podcast episode I was listening to, there's a lot of stuff I didn't really realize. And especially looking back at my last episode, since I didn't know a whole lot about Scientology at the time, because I've only talked to, I think, you and somebody else,
yeah,
Sean.
yeah.
I was very, very biased because of just the mental health things and a lot of things that were like that I'm strongly against in what they view it as. Mostly that they talk about your issue. If you have mental health, you might as well just pick a different body. And I consider that a huge problem.
Yeah,
So I'm trying, because here's the issue is that if there is people that are trying to understand about something like this, it can come off too biased where it might turn off some people. So I'm just trying to understand their
sure.
perspective to understand it even better. So I'm not, and I can get how this can be like the main thing when I was thinking before we chatted was I didn't want it to seem like I was dropping traps, because this
Right.
is what he was talking about, Miscavige was talking about in his podcast interview, was that there were people that would say certain things and they would try and lure you into these traps so they can get something over you. And I think what I was
Absolutely.
trying to do in this whole thing is be able to understand both sides. I'm pretty sure Mike's probably a great guy. Now, can I talk about that
He
one
is.
incident that,
Yes.
but that's all it is, though, is what I'm saying is like when I got sent to
Okay.
that site, it was that one thing. And I'm like, how long ago was this? I don't know, like 20 something. It doesn't,
Yeah.
you start looking at it
Okay.
like you're beating a dead
All of
horse.
everything that we've discussed up until this point actually leads into what they're doing to Mike. It's all the same thing. This is just another example of fair game. There is no prior incidents, or they would be saying it. They would be saying, oh, you know, and he beat her here and he slapped her there. They're all focused, as you yourself saw, because you looked yourself, on this one incident. Mike, in 2010, the Benjamin thing, the Benjamin Render cancer thing, it plays into what's about to happen. When Mike found out in the papers that his son was dying of cancer, he went with a friend immediately to Clearwater and tried to see his son. They stopped him at the door and refused to let him see Benjamin, and then they hit him with a trespass order so that he couldn't come back. A few days after this event, Mike was sitting in the parking lot of a doctor's office waiting for his new wife. She was having a doctor's appointment. He was out in the parking lot in the car talking on the telephone with BBC reporter John Sweeney. They were just talking about whatever. I mean, it was just between them and they were talking, but Sweeney was recording the conversation because it's so much easier.
And that's when they showed up.
So, you know, and so as he's sitting there, a dozen people, I think it was probably at least 10 people, descended upon him. Cars came into the parking lot. Now Clearwater City, the city of Clearwater is about 40 square miles. And they found him because some of these people were Scientology paid private detectives who had hunted Render down all over the city. And when they found him sitting there alone on the phone in his car, they pulled into the parking lot, and there were executives from Scientology, Kathy Render Bernardini, his ex-wife, his daughter Taryn, and Mike's brother Andrew, who flew all the way from Australia for this little get together. And they all converged on Mike sitting in this car, and the whole thing was recorded by Sweeney. So if one does not want to believe the Pinellas County Police report or the EMT, the paramedics report, I urge people to go to my blog and click on the link and listen to the recording yourself. What they are claiming, as you may have seen on Taryn's Justice for Mom site, is that Mike started screaming and swearing profanity at Kathy, and that he attacked her, that he grabbed her. Now, I have to preface this by saying that over the years, this happened in April of 2010. And over the years, this story has evolved and grown and become more gory, and the injuries have become bigger and more serious, until now the allegation is that he has destroyed her health for the rest of and crippled her for life. That's where we're at now. That is not what happened. And if you listen to the recording, the very first, can we swear on your
I've
podcast?
said it, I think, a few times.
Okay. The recording, you hear them approaching his car, and the first thing you hear is, "Fuck you."
We're a family show. No, just kidding.
Then bleep me out. Fuck you. And it didn't come from Mike. It came from one of the ladylike beings who is now attacking him. A domestic assault did happen that day, but it was not Mike. It was his ex-wife and her cronies that assaulted him. And it went downhill from there. Andrew Render, and you can hear this in the recording, Andrew Render reached in and tried to take Mike's keys away from him. And they were trying to keep him from leaving. And you can hear the struggle. And in the background, Jenny Linsom, who's a wife of another former Scientologist, and also in the Sea Org, she's in there screaming and swearing. They're all screaming and swearing at Render and telling him, "You stay away from the family and don't you come near Benjamin." That's what prompted this. that he tried to go see his son, who he thought was dying of cancer. And within days, this incident happened. And if you listen to that recording, you hear over and over again, stay away from our family. And yet, conversely, they're accusing him of abandoning them. But they're telling him and ordering him and attacking him and threatening him to stay away from them. So it goes on. And Mike tried to get out of the car. And in that, Kathy Bernardini, tried to force him back into the car. This is in the Pinellas County Sheriff's Report. And when she did that, she hurt her arm. According to the paramedics' report, there was 1 2-inch skin tear, which they bandaged. But that's coming. So
I was about to say what I saw wasn't a 2-inch thing.
No. I'm getting there. Let me get this is my baby.
Okay.
This is why I started this.
That's why I had you on.
In this case, Robbie, I know that there's 2 sides of every story, but then there's the truth and there's facts that are backed up.
Oh, I know they're lying. I'm just,
by irrefutable facts. And that's what I'm using. I'm not taking, I went into this, like I said, I went into this thinking, if Rinder is domestically abusing someone, I want nothing to do with this. I looked this up because I thought there was a problem. And when I saw all the facts and I listened to the recording and I read the reports, then I realized what was going on. So they fought him every step of the way. Now remember, he's one man and there's all these people. He went into the doctor's office. He finally made it in. And these banshees followed him in there screaming like fishwives, still swearing at him. The doctor had to come from the back where she had been, with her patient. And she's like, what's going on? And at this point, Kathy is bleeding from that little skin tear that she had. And so the doctor was like, this needs to stop, and Mike was begging, please call 911, please call the police. Mike asked for the police to be called. And this is all on the recording. And the police came and they started to investigate. And the paramedics, which are, they're automatically, called to a scene. They examined Kathy. And all of the information is right there on the police report. I mean, on the paramedics report. On a scale of 1 to 10, she rated her pain as a 2. They only noted, and it's also noted in the Pinellas County Sheriff's Report as well. He only saw 1 small injury to her 1 arm. Nobody, these trained medical professionals, these paramedics, did not see both arms. They did not see, as you can read now, blood spurting on the walls, which would have meant, she was out in the parking lot and she's now alleging that her blood was spurting on the walls. He would have had to have nicked an artery and she wouldn't be here.
It's a good movie.
But in any case, so the Pinellas County, she refused transport and signed the waiver for any further medical intervention. And according to her own documents that Taryn released, which was a letter from the surgeon who subsequently took care of Kathy, she didn't have surgery for a year, for 14 months until after this incident. And yet she accuses Mike of, during that altercation, of breaking and dislocating both her shoulder. Now, how is it that her pain with a broken and dislocated shoulder was only a 2 out of 10? How is it that if what they're saying is the truth, why is it that nobody with her, not any of these witnesses, said anything like these stories that we're hearing now to the police? He was right there.
So I believe obviously the real part, not what they're saying, because if you look at the article now, and you said the 2-inch little scraped tear. The thing that they're showing now, it looks like a dog had bit this lady in the arm and completely ripped her like arm out of socket. And like there's
Can I
just
just say that Scientology has their own complete movie
I was
studio
gonna
in
ask that shit.
California?
They faked the fucking moon landing. I bet you. No, just kidding.
Yeah, no, you know what?
Wait, what? What? Tell me more, please.
The Thetans did it. Now it was I do believe the more that I have gone over this and looked at these pictures, those injuries, if they're real, how is it that medical professional paramedics and police officers did not notice all of that? How do you not notice that? How do you not notice a dislocated and broken shoulder? So either given Miscavige's penchant for beating his subordinates, I cannot help but wonder if either somebody beat her when she was in the RPF afterwards, or it's makeup.
That's what I was gonna ask you before we went into the, but now you got me on the moon landing. So do you think they faked the moon landing with the makeup art? Do you think? No?
Those are the two possibilities that I firmly believe. And these are not conspiracy theories. I believe either that's makeup, and I'll tell you another reason why. Taryn herself released that surgeon's letter, which is on my blog. And in that blog, even though he acknowledges that Kathy said her husband attacked her.
Okay, real quick though, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we get to that, moon landing. You're giving me like the I'm like, come on, moon landing. Do you think they faked it?
No.
Damn it.
No.
I can't find anybody on my team on that.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm not into conspiracy theories.
That's not a conspiracy. I was like, I got a good idea for it, but I'll tell you later.
Let's get this straight too. The Earth is not flat.
I know the Earth's not flat, but I'm saying the moon landing thing, I think we landed there, just not when we said we did. I think that was like a video to boost up morale and, show them, hey, we made it there. There's no point in you getting there. And then we went up there on another time. But that will be a story for another day. The Taryn thing, for instance. Yeah, it does. I was going to ask you about that, if it looked like a makeup artist did that, because just the way that the pictures were taken, it seemed like usually if you're going to get I don't know if it's because if you're a reporter getting a story, you're usually traveling with a cameraman, but the way that she was describing it and the way that the pictures look like there were multiple people in that room taking the photo, not just one person. Because if someone's like a friend is taking a picture, like how Taryn says on her blog, that it says like, oh, taking pictures of her mother being there for when the wound thing happens, you would just be looking in the direction straight in front of me as I'm taking the photo, not off to the side, like someone is speaking off to the side, telling you something or talking to you. So it seemed like multiple people were in that room.
Yeah. And multiple people are involved in this fair gaming of Mike. It's not just Taryn and Kathy. This is a Scientology production, and they make slick videos for everything. I mean, if you watch the aftermath, Leah talks about the big galas that they have to attend, and where they have the horses thundering across the screen and the dramatic music. They have every capability of faking this.
Do you think that this now at this point is not really even a thing for Scientology anymore, but also a spite angle as well too? Because Mike did start another family, and he seems like that's more complete than the first one that he had. So I'm looking at it more as like now at this point they're just pissed, You know
what? I think if there is an element of that, I mean, I do call her Bitter Bernardini in my blog. I think it's not I don't think she loved him. I just don't, because when he blew, after he got out, he reached out to her and begged her to leave and come with him and start a new life. And her response, which was in writing, and he has it, and I have it somewhere on my blog as well. Her response was, "Fuck you, I'm getting a divorce." Okay. That's not the actions of a loving wife. Even if she didn't want to leave Scientology, what about, the tears? What about begging him, no, come back to us. I love you. Where's, we're a family. No, it was fuck you, I'm getting a divorce. And she followed those papers so fast. her heels must have been smoking.
So the reason I kind of like explaining everything that just happened through the whole time we just talked was that it's kind of like the QAnon thing. The QAnon thing was a bunch of people hunting pedophiles on the internet. So everyone could agree that nobody wants a kid to be molested or anything like that. And that's why it literally was they were attacking fake people. They were attacking everybody, even people that weren't pedophiles, only on the guise of that's what we're doing. We're stopping pedophiles. Now, this
Right.
Scientology thing is now attacking the angle of if you don't support this, then you support domestic abuse. And
Yeah.
that is the angle that they're tackling that I'm noticing. And I want to make sure, because if anybody that's listening hears this and decides to go over there, or anybody that stumbles across this episode after they've been looking at these groups, a lot of these
Mhm.
people that support these things, they are people that support anti-domestic violence, and this is a good goal to have. We don't want people getting hurt in their own homes,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
whether it's a guy or woman. But that's not what it is. What this is a way to use that as a disguise, as the real thing to attack Mike's character that I'm starting to notice.
Which is especially despicable. And Mike, I'm Taryn. She has aligned herself back when I first started this. She hijacked Denim Day in California, which was it's a big group get together and rally for anti-domestic abuse, and she was there with her own agenda. And see, this is why I have a problem with when people say, well, they're brainwashed or whatever. That may be. However, Taryn was there in April of 2010. She knows what happened. You can't not know that when you're saying he grabbed my mother and twisted her arms. Oh no, she's not getting.
I would figure
No,
she'd
she's
be
not
getting
getting
like a,
paid for it.
because Ron Miscavige talked about it. He said when he left and they finally found him, they said, Ron, I guess you've been missing us or whatever. Like they were talking to him, trying to get him to go back to the church.
The
He went.
love bombing didn't work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so but they kept saying this guy, it's going to be better than it was before. You're going to have your own apartment with a kitchen.
Yeah.
We know you like to cook, and it was like he was like maybe I should. Like it's kind of that thing like maybe it is going to be better, but he knew it wasn't going
Yeah.
to be, and that's kind of like what this thing is. Maybe she got an upgraded standard of living. Maybe she got an upgraded something. Maybe that's why
You
she's
know
still
what she
doing it.
got? I can tell you what she got. You're talking about a young woman who grew up barely a relationship with either one of her parents. Now she's united with her mother for, in this, the enemy of my enemy
Is not my friend.
scenario.
Yeah.
She never had a good relationship with her mother or her father. Now, at least she's got one parent in her life. And as long as she's towing the line and doing what Scientology wants her to do, the fair gaming of Mike Rinder in order to make people doubt him and the stories that he tells. Oh, he's a domestic abuser. Of course he's lying about everything. That they're trying to dead agent him. They're trying to destroy his character. That's only one part of this. I think in this situation, my personal opinion is that there is a second a benefit in here, and that is that for the first time in her life, she may have some sort of a closer connection to at least one of her parents, something that she never had before. And I think that it's probably worth the lies to keep her mother close, because the alternative is if Taryn were to leave, she's been told, and she believes in disconnection. She doesn't know that Mike would be there for her and would welcome her back and help her adapt to this new life. She just is thinking, if I leave, I'll have nothing. I think there is an element of that in there.
I guess
I
that's what
really do.
I guess that's what they mean when they say love is a powerful drug. Because I mean, how many people are willing to do something just to get like an ounce of their parents' respect or an ounce of some person's respect that they'd go to such caustic actions to be able to do so? Now,
Right.
I'm not speaking of that. That's not diagnosing of that's what the thing
No,
is. I
I'm
don't.
not. No, yeah.
I know. I just want to make sure we make that clear.
Absolutely. Like I said, this is my personal opinion about
Yeah.
this.
So
But
I
the bottom line, Robbie, as far as the Mike Rinder thing, the very last thing on the police report says everything that you need to know. Case closed, no criminal charges. Mike was not arrested for domestic violence. And you know as well as I do that had Kathy Rinder Bernardini had on her body the injuries that they want us to believe he inflicted on her that day in front of the police and the paramedics, not only would they have been noted, but he would have been arrested for domestic violence. He was not arrested. And the police even say that the story that Kathy was telling did not add up. It's in their writing. It's in their investigation.
It's the OJ law. Anytime it's a domestic violence call or something like that, most of the time, it's the guy that gets taken away just because
especially like I said, if she had those injuries on her that we can see in those photographs, I don't believe that there is a sheriff or police officer anywhere that would say, oh, well, you go on home, Mr. Rinder, and have a nice day. He would have at least been brought in for questioning. And Taryn's big thing is she started out with Justice for Mom, and her big goal was to get Rinder fired from the A&E show. That's what she stated in writing was her goal. So that kind of also makes you wonder, you know, this is supposed to be this big domestic violence, and I'm here for women. And my goal is to get Mike fired from his television show. A&E show, the show came to its natural conclusion, and they crowed that they had succeeded in having the show destroyed, even though that's not what happened, but that's what they tell you. So after Mike Rinder no longer had the A&E show, she came up with a new goal. And now her new goal is that she wants 2021 to be the year that people stop supporting Mike Rinder. Well, I have to tell you, that's not a goal that's going to happen. And she doesn't understand that the more she makes an ass of herself with these allegations, the more people are supporting him because they can see the evidence. So it's called, in Scientology, it's called a foot bullet. She's making her own, she's shooting herself in the foot with this at this point. Yeah. Because at first, okay, people are going, oh my God, this is horrible. Look at those pictures. But I and other people, especially, and before me, I'm not the one that started, Jeffrey Augustine, sorry, Jeff. Jeffrey Augustine has an excellent blog. And he's been defending this before I ever showed up on the, in this. And I highly recommend his blog. He's exceptional. And,
get him on the show.
Even he was saying, this is crap and this is why, and here's the reports and, but in spite of all of this evidence to the contrary, they're continuing. And if you're going to lie, at least be good at it. And they keep adding and embellishing. Like I said, it's to the point where, he was twisting her arms and gouging, these are her words, gouging flesh from her, strips of flesh from her arms. And you could hear the bones cracking.
Is he fucking Leatherface? He's just taking skin off.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, and she
peeling a potato.
The one, yeah, exactly. But then they're trying to push up that, and here Taryn says, my mother is this dainty, small little woman. Well, she wasn't all that dainty when she was using her body weight to try to keep Rinder in the car.
So I think another reason why this is like, before our first chat, I would have, or before on our first chat, I would have labeled this under the Scientology X cult type thing or the religion X cult type thing. Now I am labeling this under the conspiracy thing with how they've developed a lot of their stories is now trying to fit a modern way of thinking. If you're basing the 2010 incident, if you would have tried that today, and then he was still on a TV show, he would have been canceled off. There's plenty of people that even for the idea of something that was taken out of context that could be seen as racist, I've seen people get taken off SNL. I've seen people lose their jobs, everything, television networks, whatever, get their whole entire, the guy who just took over Family Feud lost his whole entire thing off of something that was taken out of context or something that was used against him.
Robbie, wait though. This all came down on him while he was in the middle of the aftermath. He was on the show. They wrote letters to to A&E Network, they wrote to Disney Corporation. They staged a protest outside of Disney. They went and picketed outside of A&E Networks in I think it's in
Did they
California
let him
or
go
New York.
after that?
No, this was all while he was still on the aftermath.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is that the tactic that they're using is a tactic that would work in today's era and time, like right this moment in this year. If you do something like that, if you protest outside of a network doesn't want to deal with that, so
Oh,
they'll
I
just
get you.
drop you. But back then, it's like their tactics are fit perfectly for now, which it makes you examine a lot of stuff that happens now where it's like a lot of people that just say, no, we're done with it. And we drop somebody. You could lose a job or lose a thing. I've had plenty of academics say, I don't want to walk into something like your show if it's all over the place. You don't have a script because I could lose my funding. That's just the
Well, no,
time period
because I
we're in
mean,
now.
yeah, but look at Leah. Leah's doing fine. She's doing People Puzzler. She's got, she's in
Because
the
she's
news.
been on
She's
King
got
and
other.
Queens. She's been on so much other stuff. There's so much more content out there. What I'm saying is like they're using tactics for someone that has just gotten something big and they don't have any other work out there. You could look through 900 something
She's,
of my episodes and see that
well, yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know that they tried so very hard to get him fired
yeah.
and it didn't work. And he's doing just fine now. I mean, they've got their podcast and he's constantly busy with with interviews and
I'm
what
sure
is,
what he's doing is great right now. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the concept of this is the conspiracy type thing where we start talking about
well, that's true.
I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm saying what
Yeah.
the thing is, it's tactics of one is that even if they did a private investigation, even if they did a private
Right.
one and rooted out that this is 100% false claims, this is crazy thinking, he did not do any of these things or make it as drastic as they're making it seem, they could
Right.
still say, and they could twist around to where in their head they go, hey, no, this is a lie. Those were like back in the day, if you would have said like, oh, the paramedics, like what they could use
Yeah.
now, the
Yeah.
paramedics
I
were
got you.
friends with Mike. That's conspiracy shit, but that's their
Yes.
thing that works in their opinion. But if they did a private
Yes.
investigation now, this is just something that's never going to go away, sadly. And that
No.
sucks for him because even if you're doing all these things now, if he has the awesome show with Leah and they're doing their thing, that's still
Mhm.
got to be on your head. And it's got to be a fucking pain in the ass to deal with that shit. And that's probably what they're banking on, which I'm like, I don't know. The only best thing we can really do is like me looking into this and seeing all this and talking about this is a concept
Sorry.
of like, it's
Let me grab that.
yeah. I'll pause it real quick.
Stop it real quick.
But with all these tactics that are getting used and displayed and this story is still going out there, it's just something that's got to linger out there, and hopefully people have the common sense to actually look at both sides of these things. But this is a media tactic. This is things that you see on the
Yes.
news in today's time, and this is the best clearest evidence for anybody out there like that's listening to be able to look and start picking out certain things that news corporations are saying or anything is
Yes.
saying, to be able to decipher out information for yourself. Now, do I
Yes.
believe in my head through what I've seen? Do I believe this story happened? Sure. But do I believe it's as far as they're going with it? I do not believe that at all, because nobody gets to walk away if it's something of that drastic proportion. And I think
Right.
it's a giant spite angle too. A lot of that is they're seeing where he's at now and they're seeing that he's still creating something and it's
Mhm.
actually better than their stuff. So like
Right.
if they were more popular than Mike, they wouldn't be attacking him as much. But
Right.
now that he is more popular, he does have a bigger viewing. He does have a bigger audience because a lot of people know how crazy Scientology is just by looking
Mhm.
into it. Now they see that. That's why they have such a small following compared to him, is because
Yeah.
you can sense the bullshit. And that's kind of
Mhm.
what is riddled through this thing. And that's when I got sent that. I was like, this is someone that is obviously working in there. I'm not sensing of I'm in belief of this. It's more of no, this is going against the thing that gives me a
Yeah.
home. And that's when
Right.
we start to get into some weird, sketchy territory.
Yeah. Well, I guess the one thing, Mike is one of Mike is very unflappable, and I think too, given he was in charge of this when he was in Scientology, this is what he did. He was in charge of shutting down, making people, look bad, He knows all of these tactics. And he knew when he walked off that, curb in London, he knew that this was what he was facing. And I think I'm probably I probably make a bigger deal about it, because I promised Taryn in my blog that I would match her step for step. Every time she came out with a new article, I was going to tear it apart. And that's what I do. Mike has moved on from it. I really think it probably, I mean, I could be wrong, and I'm not speaking for Mike. I'm just thinking that he's so much stronger than any of this. And I get offended, and I want to make it right. I want logic, and I've got this thing, where I want, look, here's the logic of this. You've got to, and he's just like, he goes on with his life, and he's doing his thing, and he's making his difference. And I mean, I just have so much respect for him. But I think I probably get more upset about all of this at this point. And there's an added element to this, where they're using this family angle, that here's this Mike, and he's done this to his family, and he's bullying us, and he's constantly doing this, which he's not. And she fails to see the bitter irony of this, where she has two half brothers, and she's putting them through this. I mean, they may not be aware of it now, but it's out there. And their father is being accused of this horrible atrocity by their own half sister. She's not thinking about what her actions, and Scientology doesn't think about what their actions are doing to the innocent bystanders in all of this. What do they call it? Acceptable casualties, or, whatever, in a war. All these innocent people, are getting hurt by her story. I mean, the people that she uses, the legitimate domestic violence people, groups that she uses, that we've contacted after she's posted pictures with them and explained the situation. And then they've been furious and, remove our pictures from your website. I think it was Gretchen Carlson, even that she had pictures of with Gretchen. I think it was Gretchen Carlson. And when she found out, she was like, no, this, they don't care of the reputations of other people, or of the domestic violence abusers, people who are abused. They're afraid to come forward because they're afraid they're not going to be believed. And now you have this crazy woman making up this story and falsely accusing her own dad of this, and using legitimate organizations to try to bolster her story when it's so patently false. They don't care about all of the collateral damage that the pain they're inflicting on all these innocent people.
That's what makes it harder for someone who is experiencing something like this, actually experiencing something like this, to be able to do anything, because they have people like this that end up ruining first impressions of people trying to support
Yeah,
this type of thing, where it's so hard.
exactly.
Like, if if I wouldn't have known you and had a good insight onto being able to talk about this subject, because I know this is like your area.
This is
um
my this one thing I can do.
yeah, so it's very hard, because when I was looking at those articles and everything like that, I'm like, I can see why, if you don't know like the real things, and you're not able to source out like what the truth is, or be able to look through if someone's feeding you a story,
Mhm.
it's very like, I don't even want to get my hands involved in it.
Right. Well, that's kind of how I had started this. Like I said, this brings me back to, when I first saw that, I was like, ooh, I don't want to be a part of.
I was recruited into a war that I didn't even realize was a war.
Exactly. So I really took some time to investigate this and figure out for myself, not with what maybe he was saying, not with what Scientology. I wanted to know for myself, so that I could be comfortable in my own skin, and in my own conscience, that when I'm defending or I'm speaking for kind of, I want to make sure that I've got right on my side. And all I had to do when I saw the police report and the paramedic report, it just doesn't fit their narrative, especially all of those wounds that they're showing on her website. They didn't exist that night. There's no way that the paramedics would not have noted it on their reports. 1 2-inch skin tear. They bandaged it. She refused any further treatment. They didn't note any other injuries. Her pain level was 2. And then, like I said, I feel like she shot her own self in the foot when she released that surgeon's letter, because he does not say that he treated Kathy for any domestic violence injuries. She said that her ex-husband assaulted her, but he went on and listed chronic medical conditions that he treated her for in her shoulder. She had tendonitis, bursitis, and an acromion hook in her shoulder. And that's what the surgery was for. You don't get tendonitis and bursitis from having your bones cracking and skin gouging. It just doesn't make sense. So, but it's so important to me, like I said, I guess it's more important to me than it is I don't know, because I constantly am keeping track of this, but I want people to realize, and the never ends who might come new to this, I want them to know this incident never happened the way they said. An assault happened that day, but they assaulted Mike. And it was a group of people who assaulted him in that parking lot that day. He never put his hands on Kathy. They're lying, and there's proof, and that is the bottom line. And that says a lot about the organization that calls themselves the most ethical religion on the planet.
I think it says a lot about you as well, too. You don't like bullies.
I don't.
I'm in that boat, too. I don't like bullies.
I don't think it's right. And that's what this is. And that's, to me, that's what Scientology is. They are a giant bully. When they are going to use these tactics against anyone, and it's not just Mike or Paulette or Gabe Cazares, they've driven people to the limit by their bullying, and it's not okay. And then to add into it, I have a religious past. I was in the convent. I went to an all-girls Catholic boarding school. I love my faith, and I have a very healthy respect for God. And then I have got this organization that does anything but good for the world, and they're calling themselves a religion. And that hits me like a double blow. Here, this bully is getting away with the things that they're doing because they can hide behind the First Amendment. And I think that is beyond wrong.
Yeah.
Because people turn to religion, whether or not you want to personally believe, people do turn to religion because they're seeking something. They need something better in their lives. And this is something that I did want to kind of bring up if we could. A lot of times people are like, how can anybody fall for such stupid stuff as Scientology? They must be so stupid. That's not what it is. People are not stupid. The majority of the people that are in Scientology are good people, and they're intelligent people. And if you look at Mike, and you look at Amy Scobie, and you look at Mary Kahn, and you look at anybody else that has left Scientology, they're good, decent, caring, hardworking people. Scientology, it's not, these stupid people fell for it. It's a mind manipulation. It's a mind rape. And it happens very slowly. And it's no different than I get mad when people say of women or men who are trapped in a domestic violence situation, well, why didn't you just leave? Because it's not that simple.
Did you say
These
mind
people,
rape?
Scientology, it is. They're.
I've seen it on labels of weed, but I've never heard it out of somebody's mouth before.
I don't smoke weed. I didn't know that. But no, it is, because it's, for example, the sec check. When you're in trouble for whatever reason in Scientology and you have to face sec checking, what Leah Remini had to go through after she asked that simple question of her friend, where's Shelley Miscavige? They put her through months
still going
of
through
mental torture, months of it, of sitting her in a locked room or in a closed room, holding those cans on that e-meter and just pummeling her with question after question. It's mind rape. It's torture. It's forcing yourself into a person's most private, place.
It's still doing that today. That's why I talk about the articles that are still being written, like they're brand new happening things, and they just keep beating the
Yes.
dead horse. You're not letting
Yes.
go of this situation. You're not,
Right.
if they can move on and they're the ones that were the victims, then you should be able to, considering that you guys are the attackers. But it's kind of seen as a loss. And sadly, if you have a record of losing or people leaving Scientology, you then look at like maybe that opens up the door for everyone to find a way out. And then at this point, you got to make sure that there are no losers. So you got to keep
That's
pursuing it,
right.
making sure you last longer than they do.
That's right. But this is just, I don't know another church that has its own prison camp and who resorts to these kind of tactics. Yes, like I've said before, and I said in the last podcast, the Catholic Church, we have our issues, and they're being addressed within. We really, I think we're heading for a split. I really do. I think we're heading for a schism. I think between our leadership and what traditional Catholics want, we're not having a meeting of the minds, and
I hope
there's
so.
protests. People are protesting, and we have these sideline priests. But at least I can talk about this without being afraid that private detectives are going to be sitting in my front yard stealing my trash, trying to intimidate me into silence. Scientology will say that they are the fighters and proponents of human rights, and they love to quote the UN and the Declaration of Human Rights. But Scientology is the biggest abuser of human rights that I think I've ever seen in this country. I really do.
The reason why I say I hope the Catholic thing ends up getting to like a low point only is because I want to know what's in the Vatican, the archives. Like you got to have some. I feel like that's where the government tosses everything that they know that people can't get to because that's like a religion thing. So if you ask to see their sacred stuff, you need a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff to be able to do so. But the government, you can just type in on a Freedom of Information Act website if you know what you're talking about and get it. But
Yeah.
a point for the ending point for the Ron Miscavige thing, when I was listening to that, I think another reason why people are in it is because you get to come across people you never would have the opportunity to. So for instance, like I was not the coolest kid in school. I definitely like kind of during my high school years smoked weed and then kind of like didn't know what to do, was kind of like just didn't talk to anybody and kind of did my own thing, was kind of a bit of a fly under the radar type. Now my brother was Mr. Popular. So my brother was 4 years older. So everyone's like, wait, that's your brother? I'm like, yeah. And then I was immediately into that group or whatever that was. And I think that's the same thing that Ramis Cavage was talking about, was he was communicating with people that he would have never met in his entire life if it wasn't for the church. And they're like
Right.
famous, like Tom Cruise, people like this. That's kind of like, to them, it's like you get to be with people you will never interact with only because you have one common thing, which is like if me and you secretly go, hey, we both been on Out of the Blank podcast. And it's like, now you have a connection. It's like,
Right.
that's kind of what the Scientology thing is that he brought up that I thought was pretty interesting. I was like, this is another reason for people who feel like losers in their life to want to go join Scientology, because then they get to come across people who they know are successful, who they know are, oh, John Travolta goes here. What? And it's like this whole entire, big thing in their head. But it just depends
Yeah, I
on.
feel bad for John Travolta. I really do. I mean, he's lost two family members. Scientology tech couldn't save him. And they teach you that, anything
Lost them to
bad that
what?
happens, huh?
Lost them to what?
Well, his wife, Kelly, who was a huge Scientologist, she died of breast cancer. And his son, Jet, died of, he had a seizure disorder.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But, they teach you that if bad things happen, it's because you pulled it in on yourself because you have crimes. And I just cannot come off of that. I mean, how would they explain that? I mean, here the man has lost his wife and his son. So what did you do to pull that in? You would think that, I don't know, I guess maybe this is again me trying to apply a logic that doesn't go with Scientology, but you would think that when the tech didn't work and, you know, none of that did what it promised, and now two beloved family members have died, you would really think that maybe he might want to check out life outside of Scientology and see maybe if there's something different.
So
you
remember the
know?
first time we talked, I mentioned that he was in it, and then I thought he left, and then you're like, no, he didn't leave. So this is
Uh-uh.
the article that because when I mentioned John Travolta was in Scientology, like nobody ever leaves, but this thing was following the tragic passing of his wife Kelly Preston. There is speculation among some that John Travolta might be or maybe breaking away from the Church of Scientology. The actor has been a devoted member of the church for 45 years, but former Scientologists believe that his statements showing support for the hospital that treated Preston's cancer are an indirect indictment of the church. And then it says the
Oh yeah.
church's founder, L. Ron Hubbard, was really opposed to chemotherapy and radiation, but Travolta wrote in a statement after Preston's passing, "My family and I will be forever grateful to her doctors and nurses at MD Anderson Cancer Center, all the medical centers that have helped." Ex-church member and Scientology critic Jeffrey Augustine talked to the Daily Mail about what this means. This statement was unequivocal in the support of the medical staff. It shows they've backed away from Scientology, he said.
Yes. I just mean, I don't think you're going to see a public leaving by Travolta. I don't think he's ever going to actually do like
They don't want
Leah,
that
or
going out there. Yeah.
or recently, what was her name? There's another actress that recently who finally said that she hasn't practiced it in 5 years. I forget her name, but I don't think you're going to see a public leaving. I know he recently sold a property in Florida, and people saw that as maybe more of his distancing. I don't know. Unless he issues a statement that says, I am no longer practicing Scientology, I'm not going to believe that he's left. He may be backing away from it. I don't know. I don't know whether they would let him.
Yeah, that's the
I
weird part. Is like, isn't their main headquarters in Florida,
Yeah,
Scientology?
well, yeah.
Now, isn't
Flag is there. Yeah, that's the Sea Org's land base. Yeah.
isn't Mike Rinder in Clearwater?
He's in the area.
Why doesn't he just move
He's
far
there
away?
because, well, because his son, he wants to be close if his son
Okay.
were to leave and need help. This is that unloving father that they're claiming. He stays close enough that if his son ever needed him, he would be there for him.
And they just probably spin it like he just doesn't want to leave
Yeah.
Scientology, or he doesn't want to get far away so he can always bash them or something, right?
He just, yeah. Taryn, if you look on her site, she's a big one that he bullies us and he's picking on us and blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, he cares, and he cares enough to stay close by just in case his son were to need him.
That's a crazy world. So much, that's so much drama. I was looking at. I was like, I don't even know if I want to get into this at all. I don't even want to look into it. It's just depressing, and I'm like, I can't imagine what it's got to be like to go through that. Like every single day, someone's slandering you because they might have a distorted perception. They might be brainwashed by something.
Well, I know for me, like I said, I'm outright raged by it, and every time I see a new article by her, you can bet within a day or two you're going to see something on my blog answering her, because like I said, I promised her I'd match her step for step. And because I think it's just it's and I said this on Leah's podcast. I said Scientology, I was witnessing a mugging. When I was seeing all of these hurt people sharing their stories and I saw all that pain, I felt like I was witnessing a mugging, and I had a choice. I could walk on by, oh, I saw the show. Yeah, wow, that was terrible. And I could keep going with my life. Or I could try to figure, is there something I can do? And I didn't know what to do until I found out, all of this stuff about these accusations against Mike. And it's just kind of taken off from there, and I've gone more involved in exposing them and their lies, like the volunteer ministers and all their fake charity things that they do. But, I felt like this was a mugging that I didn't want to walk past. One of the women on the guests on the aftermath, her name was Mary Kahn. Her son, whom she loves so very much, has disconnected from her. And when she was talking about it in that episode, her tears, I'm a mother, I have a son. And it just broke my heart. And I just wanted to reach through the TV and just hug her. And then I wanted to reach through the TV and punch David Miscavige for causing this kind of pain, because Mary is not the only one who's lost children and grandchildren and spouses and parents. And, friends and family. And it's a mugging. It's a giant mugging. And I just couldn't walk past it. I felt like I needed to do something, and I don't think that I'm all that effective. But I feel like if I can educate never ends and people new to this, then if even one person doesn't take that first personality test, to get in the door of Scientology, if I can, one person, then maybe I've made a difference.
I think that's it's surprisingly it's this stuff that looks small seems to do the most amount of damage. I think what you're doing is very important, especially giving me the opportunity to be able to speak with you
Now, you've
about this
given
stuff.
me the opportunity, Robbie. Seriously, you've got the podcast. You're giving me the chance to get something out there. And I mean, I always get so nervous, and maybe I'm crazy, I don't know, but if I can get the message out in any way, and you're giving me this opportunity, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I really, truly do.
Stephanie, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to talk much more, but where can people find you, your links, your blog, everything, so they could be able to find some of your work as well too?
My blog is on WordPress. It's called Confront and Shatter. And on Twitter, I have two profiles. One's my personal one, but my Scientology one is at ULTIOETVERITAS. It's Ultio et Veritas, which is Latin for vengeance and truth. And I just feel like truth is a form of its own vengeance. If you can counter the bullying and you can get the truth out there and change the public's perception, that's the best form of vengeance.
That's a great way to end the show. Thanks again, Stephanie, for joining me, and thanks
Thank
for
you,
listening
Robbie.
to this episode of Out of the Blank.